Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Maria, I don't have the time.
That's okay. That's
I
okay.
can't.
I'll try and do it.
Hey everybody,
I can't do
we
it.
are on recording. So welcome, big welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is, it's Saturday, and it's the 26th of April today, 2025. My name is Johan, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater, and I'm from Sweden. I will be your host for today's study. We have a bunch of wonderful co-hosts today. We got Rob, Maria F, and Nancy J. Thank you so much for your service, for helping out. If you have any questions during today's meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the question and answer session. Please note that the speaker Harlan G will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the question and answer session which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study. And also please turn off your video if you're exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7th tradition. This money goes towards the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading our recordings, and we also send contributions to our intergroup and WSO. We will post the link to the previous week's recordings. These are available by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. So, ladies and gents, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the only one, Mr. Harlan G. Take it away, man.
Thank you, Mr. You won. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on a long timers interview with the international region, or the no, not international. It's the
virtual.
The internet, the
Virtual.
virtual. Thank you, virtual region. And I posted a thing in the chat, but not everybody can see it. I just don't know how to fix it. So Nancy will maybe repost it.
I did. I just did.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to start on page 153 at the very bottom of the page, years ago in 1935. But before we get to that part of the book, before we do that, we are going to talk about what led up to this trip to Akron, Ohio. Now, Bill got sober on the 14th of this, on the 11th of December. He goes into Towns Hospital, and on the 12th and the 13th, he is sober. On the 14th, after 2 days of sobriety, Bill will work in a day and a half the steps. The only thing he had left to do was make his 9th step amends and continue with his step 10s. But the bottom line is he is going to get sober in mid-December of 1934. And he is immediately imbued by God with this urge, with this signal, with this information that his lot in life, his mission in life, is to spread the word of this to other people. In other words, to sponsor. He didn't have examples to follow. He followed his heart. He followed his instinct. And he went to places like bars in the Bowery. He went to places where alcoholic people would hang out. And he had lots of enthusiasm. And he's dragging people off bar stools and trying to get them sober. Nobody is staying sober. Nobody is staying sober. And he keeps trying, and he keeps trying, and he keeps trying. And on Tuesday night, they had their meeting of the Oxford group that they went to. And Bill Wilson is home, and he's getting ready for the Oxford group meeting. And he says to Lois, "This isn't working. This isn't working. Nobody is staying sober. Nobody is getting sober." And she turned to him and she changed the course of the world when she said to him, "But you're staying sober." It was so obvious. And years later, she was interviewed about that day. And somebody asked her, and I know Clancy Imislund had a conversation with her about this. Clancy recalls in a podcast that he spoke to Lois about that day. And Lois told Clancy years after Bill was dead, "It just seemed so obvious to me that Bill was staying sober." And when Lois told him this, he just hit his head like that. And he said, "Yeah, I'm staying sober." So his attempt to carry the message to other alcoholics was producing what no one was able to produce since 1917 when he started drinking. And that is a prolonged period of happy and peaceful sobriety. And then Lois suggested to Bill Wilson, "Why don't you go see Dr. Silkworth and see what Dr. Silkworth says?" And Bill Wilson the next day went to see Dr. Silkworth at the Towns Hospital in New York City. He went into Manhattan and he went to the Towns. Bill lived in Brooklyn, and Towns Hospital was on Central Park West in Manhattan. And Dr. Silkworth says, "I've heard about some of those shenanigans you're pulling out there. And you're preaching to these drunks from a moral hilltop. You're preaching to these drunks about God and the spiritual solution." He says, they're not ready to hear that. He says, they're not ready to hear you do that. You've got to tell them what I told you. You've got to tell the drunks about the hopeless condition of mind and body. You've got to tell them of the allergy of the body and tell them of the twist of the mind. Now, just shortly after that, Bill Wilson gets in touch with somebody who is heading up a proxy fight for a tool and die maker in Akron, Ohio. Now, for those who do not know, Akron, Ohio was the tire capital of the world. It was the nickname of Akron is Rubber City. Rubber City. Goodyear is there. Firestone is there. Goodrich is there. Most of the tires that came into play came from Akron, Ohio. See, we did make a lot of things here in the United States a long time ago. We manufactured a lot of things here in the States. So Bill Wilson gets involved in this, and they said to him that if you can win this proxy fight, what is a proxy fight? A proxy is a vote that a stockholder in a company takes to appoint someone else to do their bidding. And that's basically what it is. I'm probably not describing it as perfectly as I could, but a proxy basically is, I'm going to vote for Sam to run the company, and you guys are going to vote for Fred to run the company, whatever that may be. And he goes to Akron, Ohio, with a group of the guys who were interested in this to take over a tool and die company in Akron called Akron Tool, Die, and Rubber. And they lose their proxy fight. And Bill Wilson is in Akron, Ohio, and he's broke. And the guys that were there with him left. And he has no money. And he doesn't know how he's going to pay his hotel bill. And he's pacing and pacing and pacing. And, well, I'm going to let the book tell you the story. But that's how Bill Wilson ended up in Akron, Ohio. He ended up in Akron, Ohio, as the head of a group that was looking to take over a tool and die maker in Akron that did business with the tire companies. And that's how he ended up in Akron. Now he is fresh off his visit to Dr. Silkworth to learn not to preach from a moral hilltop. He's fresh off of his visit from Dr. Silkworth, but he has not had an opportunity to try out the new method yet. He is still sort of more involved in the business end of things. And so here he is in Akron, Ohio. And on the bottom of page 153, the bottom of 153, it says, years ago in 1935, one of our number, Bill Wilson, made a journey to a certain western city, that would be Akron, Ohio. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially. I'm at the top of 154, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place. Discredited and almost broke, still physically weak and sober but a few months. He saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? Now let's take a look at what's happening here. It is Saturday, the 11th of May, 1935, the day before Mother's Day. Bill Wilson is in a hotel called the Mayflower Hotel. The Mayflower Hotel is got in the lobby a bar, and it's got a church directory and phone booths. And Bill is sort of pacing back and forth, and he's ruminating, how am I going to pay my bill? How am I going to get back to New York? What am I going to do? And he doesn't know. But he knows that because there's a bar at the other end of this lobby, he knows that he's in trouble. And he decides, miraculously, not to go drink, but to call some of the clergy people listed on the directory to see if they can put him in touch with a drunk to talk to. He's never done anything like this before. He's never really done this, and it was very frightening to him. Now, dare I say, we get told that he called up Reverend Tunks, who put him in touch with Henrietta Seiberling, and that was the first call he made. That is not true. That is about the 10th call he made. Most of the clergy people that he spoke to were not so anxious to talk to him. They didn't want to think that people in their congregation were drinking and getting drunk. They didn't want to think that. Let's go back to the book, and it's one dismal afternoon. I'm in the middle of 154. One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. See, he knew that in that bar was release from his fear, because liquor was doing something for him that's called the effect. What is the effect? The effect is that sense of ease and comfort that comes instantly by taking a drink. And that effect is so elusive that we will pursue it to the gates of insanity or death. So, but it also, when we drink the liquor, if an alcoholic drinks the liquor, they also trigger the physical allergy and they cannot stop. So he's in this lobby, and one side is the church directories, the other side is the bar, and he's torn up. He doesn't know which way to go. Of course he couldn't drink, but why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Remember, he got sober mid-December. This is May. Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. So he's hearing what's going on at the bar. My life, your life is hanging in the balance. Is it odd or is it God? Is it odd that he didn't drink because that's what alcoholics do? Or is it God of what is about to take place? One of the greatest miracles in the history of mankind. But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. See, he's figuring there's alcoholics here too. He just doesn't know any. And he figures he'll phone a clergyman, and a clergyman will be able to put him in touch. Again, is it odd or is it God? He didn't go get drunk. My life, our lives, and the lives of alcoholics, drug addicts, gamblers, compulsive overeaters, you name it, sex addicts, love addicts, you name it, 50,000 generations in the future are hanging in the balance. He would phone a clergyman, his sanity returned, and he thanked God, top of 155. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. So let's stop right there, and I just want to give you some background information. He calls clergyman after clergyman who says, what are you calling me for? People in my congregation don't drink. People in my congregation are not alcoholics. Remember what we talked about in the chapter to employers, that the disease has loss. We lose time of our lives. Ignorance, we don't know that there's alcoholism everywhere. And denial. Loss, ignorance, and denial. And these clergymen are no different from the businessmen. They don't know that people in their congregation are alcoholics. They don't know that people in their congregation are affected by alcoholism in their families. He calls up Reverend Tunks, Walter Tunks, and Walter Tunks puts him in touch with Henrietta Seiberling. Henrietta Seiberling is the daughter-in-law of Seiberlings that own Goodyear Tire. Bill doesn't want to call her because they may want to do business with Goodyear. If things turn around, he's going to want to do business with Goodyear Tire. He thinks that it is Seiberling's wife. It is Seiberling's daughter-in-law, and they're going through a divorce. Now, is this odd or is this God? A few months before this, Harvey Firestone, who was the president of Firestone Tire, who was a member of the Oxford group, sent for a reverend who didn't normally come to Akron. And the reason he sent for a reverend, was 3 months before this would be February, March of 1935. Harvey Firestone's son, Bud Harvey Jr., was an alcoholic, a real bad alcoholic. And this reverend from the Oxford Group movement comes to Akron, and they have a prayer session for Harvey Firestone's son. Not long after that, a couple of people, Henrietta Seiberling, Ann Smith, the wife of Dr. Bob, and a couple of other members of the Oxford Group, T. Henry and Clarice Williams, among others, they decide to have another prayer session for Dr. Bob. And Dr. Bob is an alcoholic. And they have a prayer session. And they ask God to send him help. Now remember, we are talking about 1935. We're talking about a different era. So we have a situation where a single woman, not married, but living on the Seiberling estate, is talking to Bill Wilson on the phone. And she says to him, "Yes, we've been waiting for you," and tells him to come over. How many women, single women, would tell a man they've never met, they know nothing about him, in 1935, "Here's my address, here's where I live, take a taxi cab out here, I will pay your fare, come out to my house." And Bill Wilson comes out to the gatehouse of the Seiberling estate to find out that Henrietta is not the wife of the Goodyear, of the people, the Seiberlings who run Goodyear. She is the daughter-in-law and going through a divorce. Is all this odd, or is all this God? She tells him to come over. Let's go back to the paragraph. Remember, we're talking about Dr. Bob here, and he was in the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. We're talking about Dr. Bob now, not Henrietta Seiberling. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Dr. Bob tried a lot of different things to stop drinking. Nothing worked. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be an alcoholic. Now, Dr. Bob is obviously a doctor, but he knew nothing of the twist of the mind. He knew nothing of the allergy of the body. So he kept taking that first drink. He kept taking that first drink, thinking he's just going to have a few tonight and then stop, not realizing he cannot drink at all without setting that allergy, that allergic reaction in motion. What is that allergic reaction? It is an actual physical craving for more of the same. And the more he drinks, the more he wants. The more he wants, the more he drinks, and it's just endless. But even being a doctor, he knows nothing of this. Bill Wilson knows of this because he had Dr. Silkworth tell him about the allergy of the body and the twist of the mind. And Ebby Thatcher told him in late November of 34 of the spiritual remedy for the condition. So Bill is the confluence. Bill is the meeting point. The confluence of rivers is where rivers come together. Well, Bill Wilson is the confluence of the knowledge of the physical, the mental, and the problem and the solution. Forget about the physical and the mental for just a second. Bill is the only person we know of. There may be others, we just don't know of them. Bill is the only person to know of both the problem that he got from Silkworth and the solution that he got from Ebby. When I was new in OA in 1979, we used to have a poster in AA rooms because we had a lot of our meetings in churches where they had AA meetings as well. And we had our meetings at the North Scottsdale, North Side Alano Club in Chicago. And then there was a place called Four Nickels, 5555 Lincoln. And they had AA meetings there too. They used to call it Four Nickels because the address is 5555. And there was AA meetings at Swedish Covenant where we met there too. And there was a poster. And the poster said, Dr. Jung told Roland, Roland told Ebby, Ebby told Bill, Bill told me, or told the world. So it was Dr. Jung told Roland, Roland told Ebby, and Ebby told Bill, Bill told the world. What are they talking about? The spiritual solution to the problem. They're talking about the spiritual solution. Let's go back to page 155. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. This was a big thing for Dr. Bob, and that's why he would not make ninth step amends. He wouldn't go make amends because he didn't want people to find out he was an alcoholic. Well, there was only one person in Akron that knew Bob that didn't know he was an alcoholic, and that was him. Everybody else knew he was an alcoholic. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. Now, I'm going to back up here and come back to this. I want to set the meeting between Bill and Bob. It is now the day before Mother's Day. Henrietta Seiberling will telephone Ann Smith in the late afternoon of May 11th, 1935, the day before Mother's Day. Ann Smith will tell Henrietta Seiberling, she'll say, Henrietta, we would love to come, but Dr. Bob brought me a potted plant and he put it on the table. He bought me a potted plant for Mother's Day and he's potted underneath the table, unable to move. So Dr. Bob was drunk. Now, Dr. Bob the next day had one of those hangovers. I've never had a liquor hangover. If you added up all the liquor I've drank in my life, it probably wouldn't fill most water glasses because I am not a person who likes to drink alcohol. I'm not. I don't like the taste and I don't like the smell. But I've had food hangovers. And so I can only imagine what a liquor hangover feels like, but he was not feeling so good the next day. And they have to make the call because Ann and Dr. Bob do not want to disappoint Henrietta Seiberling. They do not want to disappoint her. But Dr. Bob makes his wife agree that they're going to stay 15 minutes and then Ann Smith is going to get one of her sick headaches. And she's going to tell Henrietta that she needs to go home, that she's got one of her headaches. So Dr. Bob, Bill spends the night there. Dr. Bob comes in at approximately 5 p.m. on Mother's Day, 1935, May the 12th. As I look at my calendar, is it odd or is it God? Mother's Day is on the 11th this year, not quite the 12th, but okay, it's the same basic thing. But anyway, Dr. Bob comes in at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon to the Cyberlink Gatehouse to visit Henrietta. He has his son and his daughter with him. He has his wife with him. The wife, the son, and the daughter go off with Henrietta, and Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson go upstairs to the library in the gatehouse at approximately 5 p.m. He tells himself that in 15 minutes, Henrietta is going to get one of her headaches and he's going to be away from this guy. He doesn't want to listen to this man. He doesn't want to be confronted with this. He's tried everything. It's all a bunch of malarkey. It's all a bunch of hype. It's all a bunch of nothing. This guy ain't going to tell me anything I don't know. Henrietta and Ann Smith hear laughter coming from the library. How could two people so mortally afflicted laugh? But that's the magic. What is the shortest distance between two human beings? It's a straight laugh. If I can get you laughing, then we have something to build on. We have something to build on. 6 hours later, 6 hours later, they come down. Dr. Bob says to Henrietta and his wife, Ann, this is the first man I've ever spoken to that understands my drinking. Why is that amazing? Why is that amazing? The reason that it's amazing is Bill Wilson never said one word about Dr. Bob's drinking. Not a word. He followed what Dr. Silkworth told him. And he told Dr. Bob of the fatal nature of alcoholism. He told Dr. Bob of the allergy of the body. He told Dr. Bob of the twist of the mind. And he told Dr. Bob that the disease will kill if untreated. Being a physician, this was new information for Dr. Bob, as I previously mentioned. With this information, the allergy of the body and the twist of the mind, Dr. Bob is starting to understand that there's no escaping this disease except by spiritual means. He's starting to understand, but what he will not understand until June is that without a 9th step amends, in the Oxford group, this is called restitution. Amends is AA language. Oxford groupers didn't talk about making amends. They talked about making restitution. Basically, it's the same thing, but amends was not part of their lingo, was not part of their language. So they didn't talk about that. So he would not do step 9. And if there's anybody that decides that they're not going to do this and they're not going to do that, they're not going to recover. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You have to go through with the entire program, even if you're Dr. Bob. And there were 6 steps in the Oxford group movement. And those 6 steps, one of those steps was made restitution to the people that you had harmed. And without doing that, forget about it. I'll go over the 6 steps of the Oxford group movement for you, because I know if I don't, it'll come up in Q&A. The 6 steps of the Oxford group movement were, at that time, number 1, complete deflation. Number 2, dependence and guidance from a higher power. Number 3, a moral inventory. Number 4, confession. Number 5, restitution. Remember, I told you they don't talk about amends. And number 6, continued work with other alcoholics. Now, that step at that time was to give testimony for what Jesus had done for you, what God had done for you. And there were the 4 absolutes of the Oxford group movement: absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. I'm taking this information on the 6 steps of the Oxford Group Movement from page 263 in the 4th edition. Page 263 in the 4th edition has the 6 steps of the Oxford Group Movement listed right there. 263 in the 4th edition. Okay, now, so Dr. Bob is absolutely intrigued by this complete stranger, this man who he never met before in his freaking life. He never saw this man. He didn't know this man. If he passed him on the street, he would not give the man a second thought. And yet this man speaks and understands the language of the heart. He understands and speaks the language of the heart. And he could identify with Bill Wilson. Dr. Bob could identify with Bill Wilson in a way he could not identify with anybody who had spoken to him before about his alcoholism. What was the difference? Bill is an alcoholic and these other people are not. So if a non-alcoholic is speaking to me, or a non-compulsive overeater is what I meant to say, sorry. If a non-compulsive overeater is speaking to me, I just hear it as chatter. I hear it as noise. I hear it as just nattering. Like Charlie Brown, when the teacher is speaking or an adult is speaking in the Charlie Brown cartoons, they just go, walk, 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 walk. That's what I'm hearing when people wanted to give me dieting tips. People that weighed 140 or people that weighed 160 would like to give me, when I was 600 pounds, 500 pounds, 700, whatever it is, they want to give me tips like, why don't you just eat half? Why don't you push yourself away from the table? Why don't you walk around the block after every meal? Why don't you drink water? Because then it'll fill your stomach up. You won't eat so much. And when they would give me this kind of advice, I would try to be polite to them. But I knew in my mind, buddy, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You have no idea what it is to be me. But when you speak to me based on your experience, I know that you speak to me and you are using the language of the heart. So I may not know you. You may be very different from me, very, very different from me. Maybe a different religion, a different gender, a different part of the country, a different socioeconomic class, whatever. Doesn't matter. Everything is erased away because of the common denominator of the language of the heart. And Bill was speaking the language of the heart to his new friend, Bob Smith. Let's continue, page 155. Oh, wait, there's one other point I wanted to make. I said I'd get back to it. I better keep my word. Okay. He would do anything, he said, but that. Oh, I think I did mention this. If I make a decision today, I'm not going to do this amends, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. I'm flirting with death. Sam Shoemaker gave us the 4 absolutes. And the 4 absolutes are the impediments, not the 4 absolutes, excuse me, strike that. He gave us the 4 impediments to God. What is an impediment? An impediment is something that slows or stops progress. It could be a speed bump or it could be a wall. It either slows or stops progress. Well, the four impediments are a resentment that you will not let go of, which became step 4, a secret you will not tell, step 5, a harmful thrill that you will not stop, steps 6 and 7, and a restitution that you will not make, steps 8 and 9. The 4th of the impediments is a restitution that you will not make. I'm going to ask somebody to post the impediments in the chat so we can save a question for later, because I know that's going to come up. It comes up every time. So if someone could post the 4 impediments in the chat, I would be I would be very appreciative for that. Okay, bottom of 155. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. So Bill Wilson is now going to the Smith home. He's leaving Cyberling and going to Dr. Bob and Ann's. Sometime later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, this is Dr. Bob now, not Bill, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problems squarely, that God might give him mastery. Now, let's give you a little background on that. Dr. Bob talks about June the 10th, 1935 as the day he returned from the American Medical Association convention in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1935. Investigation of the dates tells us that either he got his dates wrong or he lied to Ann Smith about the dates so that he could go to Atlantic City earlier and get drunk. Because as we look at, and you can Google this yourself, Google American Medical Association Convention 1935, it will begin on the 10th, not end on the 10th, and end on the 17th of June, 1935. So either Bob lied to Ann and lied in the book to cover his tracks, but he probably did not get sober on the 10th. He got sober on the 17th. But we count the 10th as Founders Day because that's the date that they put in the big book, and that's the date that we go by. But either he lied about the date deliberately to Ann. Alcoholics lie. I know Dr. Bob is a great guy, and he's our co-founder in AA and blah blah blah. I understand that, but alcoholics lie, particularly the kind that want to drink really badly or something. But the date of the drunk of Dr. Bob was probably more the 17th. But okay, I'm just giving you background. I'm just giving you history. You can Google it yourself. American Medical Association Convention in Atlantic City, 1935, and you'll see that the dates were incorrect in the book. Or he lied so he could get drunk a week earlier because he probably couldn't stand himself. He had been sober since Mother's Day. He was probably jumping out of his skin. Okay, so that said, he wakes up on the day he gets to Akron. He ends up at the home of his nurse in Ravenna, Ohio. Ravenna is a suburb of Akron. And the nurse calls up Ann Smith and says, "Hey, guess who's at my house? Drunk." And Ann says, "Do the first two guesses count?" And the nurse says, "Okay." And she says, "Bugs Bunny?" And she says, "No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm just trying to be funny." They know he's there. So Bill Wilson gets in the car. Dr. Bob loved his Oldsmobile. He drove an Oldsmobile. And they get in the car and he fetches Dr. Bob from the home of his nurse and brings him back to Akron. And the next day, Dr. Bob has a surgery scheduled. Dr. Bob was a proctologist. That means he operates on your rear end and all that's associated with your hind end. I'm glad he wasn't operating on me that day. He gets up, and Dr. Bob got something from Bill Wilson that a lot of people wish their sponsors would do. And Dr. Bob got a beer from Bill Wilson to steady his hands so that Dr. Bob didn't kill somebody, because, the DTs had settled in, and you could kill somebody if you have a scalpel in your hand and you're shaking because of the DTs. A lot of these guys are shaking so bad, they look like an Airedale trying to crap out a peach pit. You could kill somebody. So he gave him a beer to settle his hands. And he told Dr. Bob, "I will meet you in the parking lot as soon as the surgery is over, and I will take you home and put you to bed." Hours and hours and hours passed. All right, let's go back to page 156, and we'll let the big book tell you the story. One morning, he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. In other words, he's ready to make his 9th step amends and tell people he harmed them. Here's what I did. I'm an alcoholic, so on and so forth. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. He was very surprised by this. He thought he hid it well. Nope. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. In other words, had he been another profession, might not be so bad, but he's a proctologist. He is a surgeon, and he's drunk. Well, that doesn't go over very well. I don't want a guy drunk operating on me. Holy mackerel, I don't want that. So he had to face his fear because Bill Wilson convinced him that unless he did, he's not going to get well. Middle of 156, at midnight, he came home exhausted, but very happy. About 11:45 would be more appropriate because it was still, as they say, June the 10th. I believe it was the 17th, but that's okay. But very happy. He has not had a drink since. He never was to drink liquor again during his life. Never. And he did that mostly happily. The first 2 years of his sobriety, he did have a lot of thoughts of drinking, urges to drink, but he never did. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. So within 4 years, he made all of his amends. He is sober. He is alive and helping others. And he will become a stalwart member of AA for the rest of his life. And he will pass in November of 1950, 15 years later, with 15 and a half years of sobriety and thousands of lives that he touched. And he touches our life today. He touches our life because through God, Dr. Bob has become immortal. The work he has done will live forever. There will never be a day on earth that they're not talking about Dr. Bob. His sobriety will be one of the key moments of the history of mankind forever. Forever. There will never be a day when Dr. Bob's sobriety will not cast its shadow upon the still suffering, that they too can live in the sunlight of the Spirit because of this man. Because of this man's sobriety, Bill Wilson proved to himself and others that Dr. Silkworth was right, and that by talking to him about the fatal nature of the disease, it made all the difference in the world. And Dr. Bob will help others get sober on his way to a great life. Middle of 156. But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect. She replied, "Yes, we've got a corker. He just beaten up a couple of nurses, goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober, though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight." And this is going to refer to Alcoholics number 3, Bill Dotson. Now, let's take a look again at the history that's presented to us that's not in the big book here. Is Bill Dotson going to be the very first person that they're going to try this out on? No. There's going to be 2 other people. And those 2 people are not going to accept what Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob are proposing to them. They are still going to think that they can do this by themselves. They're not, one is a doctor and one is, I forgot the other guy's profession. They're not going to do this, but Bill Dotson will. Now, Let's assume that the date in the big book is correct. Let's not quarrel with it. Let's not change it. Let's just accept it as right. I've given you the history, why it's wrong, how it's wrong, but let's just for the moment say it's right. June the 10th, 1935, Dr. Bob gets sober. June the 26th, 1935, after 2 days of sobriety, they are going to start working with Bill Dotson. And they're going to tell you in the chat, and what we're going to read, that they gave him 2 days to get sober. Why do I keep preaching that we must work the steps quickly? The reason that I keep preaching this is because of the promise on page 89. And the promise is nothing ensures immunity from drinking like intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when all other measures failed. The most important thing I can do with my abstinence is to pass it to the next suffering person. I can pass it to the next suffering person only if I have a recovery myself. Only if I have a recovery. Now, when they go see when they go see Bill Dotson, Bob has 16 days of sobriety according to the date that we're given in the book. You don't have to show your hand, but I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. How many of you were sponsoring 16 days after getting sober, after getting abstinent? Not a lot of you. We need to pick up the pace. We need to stop a lot of these extraneous diversions. We don't have to know everything before we start sponsoring. We don't have to be PhDs in AA history. We don't have to do a thesis on the history of Henrietta Seiberling or what have you. We don't need that. We don't need to do that. We need to be abstinent, and we need to have worked through the steps so that we have a spiritual awakening as the result of those steps. And if we've had that, then we can start working with people, and then we can go out there and we can go back and study a lot of different things that we missed, a lot of different things. But we need to get to that point where we have a spiritual awakening, in my opinion, and then start working with other people. And then we can go back and pick up a lot of information that we sort of set off to the side to get us going where we need to be. I'm at the bottom of 156. Here was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. Bill Dotson was a lawyer. He was from Carlisle County, Kentucky. There's not a lot of podcasts of him, but there are some. And he's got this thick Kentucky accent. You could cut it with a chainsaw. These two fellers came in my room, and I thought, man, I don't want to hear what they have to say at all. And he tells you the story, but he's got this thick accent. So you almost want to get him some subtitles, but if you listen enough, you can hear what he's saying to you. He's telling you that these two fellers, Dr. Bob and Bill were both 6 feet tall, which in that generation was a very tall man. These guys were very tall, big guys. Dr. Bob was husky, but Bill Wilson was like a beanpole. He was a skinny little beanpole. One thing you can't accuse Bill Wilson of is being a food addict. You just can't. But he was a skinny guy, but they were very tall people. He says, these two fellas came in my room, and that's just exactly the way he speaks or spoke. Here was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. the use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now. But one of the friends said, put him in a private room, we'll be down. That was Dr. Bob, because Dr. Bob had privileges at Akron City Hospital, and he said, put him in a private room, which scared the daylights out of Bill Dotson, because he had always been in a ward. Now he's in a private room, and you know what he's figuring? He's dying. That's what he figured. And in some of the private rooms, they would store flowers that were meant for other patients. So they're bringing these flowers, and he's in there by himself. He figures, I'm dying. This is it. I'm dead. I'm dead. 2 days later, in other words, let him sober up for how long? 2 days. Not 2 weeks, not 30 days, not 90 days, 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. Who are you fellas, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before, said one of the visitors, Dr. Bob. We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism. One of the reasons that Dr. Bob did most of the talking is because Bill wanted Bob to do the talking to get him used to this. He wanted Bob to do the talking. He had talked enough. So, okay. Now, there's a very famous painting, and if you come to Stepping Stones, some of us are going to go out there. I don't know that I'll go, but some people are going to Stepping Stones in November when we go out for the Vision Convention on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of November in Newark, New Jersey. Some people go to Stepping Stones, and that's where Bill and Lois lived, not Bill and Bob, Bill and Lois lived throughout their adult life. And there's a painting there that you've seen many times. It's called The Man on the Bed. And it's Bill and Bob, and they're sitting there, and they're talking to a guy in his undershirt, and the guy in his undershirt is Bill Dotson. A very famous painting. We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism, page 157. Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it. So here's Bill Dotson. He doesn't understand it either. He's lost his law practice. He's running for office. He's running for the city council. His alcoholism will be used against him in the election, and he will lose that election, but he will not drink. He doesn't understand the twist of the mind. He doesn't understand the allergy of the body. He doesn't understand anything about alcoholism, and he certainly doesn't understand that there is a solution. He doesn't know that there's a spiritual solution. He still believes what we mostly believed, and that is the only solution was willpower. The only solution was push yourself away from the table. Just eat half. Don't eat dessert. Walk around the block after every meal. Drink water before the meal. You won't be so hungry. All of the useless, idiotic, well-intentioned, but ignorant advice that was given us. I had a psychiatrist or psychologist in the hospital tell me to put a picture of something that inspired me on the refrigerator door. Put a picture of something that inspires you, and when you see the picture, you'll be less likely to overeat. Now, the only person that could disseminate such hogwash is someone who does not have any knowledge whatsoever about this disease. Okay. We're going to stop there. I just realized